This is the World Organic News for the week ending 23rd of January 2017. Jon Moore reporting. This week we begin with a man who took steps to save himself time and grow food in one action. Suburbia is known for its nature strips or lawns, from the fence to the road. We can either turn these into food forests or mow them to comply with the middle-class lawn is king paradigm. Guy Roth from Narrabri in western New South Wales had a problem. Quote, "I had nothing but khaki weed, pigweed and bindi-eye," end quote. I might also add that Guy Roth is also known as Dr Roth cotton researcher. So faced with this dilemma, the Roth family ploughed the front lawn and planted wheat. That was back in May 2016. In December they harvested. The crop took some losses from cockatoos and other parrots, but in the end he harvested 20 kilos of grain. That's about 44 pounds in the old money. The good doctor plans to make some bread from the harvest. A link to this story is, of course, in the show notes. Staying with wheat, the blog Permie has a video post from Washington State University on that little-known variation of wheat, perennial wheat. This is something that's come up in an earlier podcast, I'm sure, but this post lets you see the stuff. Kevin Murphy, assistant research professor, narrates the video and explains the benefits and the drawbacks of this plant. The benefits? Less ploughing, fossil fuel usage, spraying and fertiliser use. The drawbacks? Mainly yield. The video is about the need for further research to increase yields through crop selection, testing in different climates and so on. It's a quick 2-minute video, so worth a look. While we're on the subject of slightly out-of-the-box ideas, the blog Be Conscious brings us the post Why a Topbar Beehive? Topbar, I hear you ask? Yes. We are, I'm sure, all familiar with the Langstroth hives dotted across the globe. It is the favourite of the commercial beekeeper. A mature technology, its limits and strengths are well known. The great advantage of the Topbar design is that it's closer approximation to natural conditions. Bars holding the honeycomb lie parallel to the top of a box, which can be up to 6 or 8 feet long. That said, the greatest worry with a Topbar is the possibility of cross-combing. That is, each vertical sheet of comb not remaining independent of its neighbour. If the space between the combs exceeds the bee space, the bees will attempt to fill the space with comb. So the initial setup and measurements for a Topbar are critical. That done, the output from the Topbar hive is different from the Langstroth as well. The latter is designed for honey production and very little else. The Topbar still produces honey, but also large amounts of beeswax. In the Langstroth, the comb is supplied and the bees fill it. In the Topbar, a line of wax is provided and the bees build a comb on this. It is also then available for harvesting. In the Langstroth system, the comb is uncapped and left in the frames as the honey is spun out. In the Topbar system, the whole comb is cut off and removed from the hive. I have read that it is possible for the Langstroth frames to accumulate pesticides in the permanent frames, whereas this cannot occur with the Topbar system as the wax is replenished each year. But having to build combs means less energy/time for honey collection. You make your choices and you live with the decision. The blog Human Meets Nature brings us a post of great import. Where did nature go? The image of Rachel Carson at the top of the post sets the tone. For those of you who may not have heard of Rachel Carson, she published Silent Spring back in the 1960s, which showed the reality of the bioaccumulation of DDT in the environment and its effect upon eggshell thickness, amongst other things. I've placed a link in the show notes if you'd like to know more. Back to Where Did Nature Go? The author, not political in nature, has noticed something over the past couple of years. Quote, "There's been 3 huge political issues in the last couple of years that even I couldn't miss. The first was the Scottish independence referendum. I'm Scottish, so that one was very much unmissable. Second was Brexit, and third is the ongoing drama of the impending Trump presidency. More than the political back and forth, the infighting and one-upmanship, I've been struck by the absence of one key issue, the key issue, during these debates. The relationship between humans and nature and the worsening environmental crisis," end quote. Well, might we ask, where did nature go? Particularly with the removal of all mention to climate change from the White House website on the day of the inauguration. Yet the post ends on a positive note, which I think we all need at this moment. Quote, "Nature just isn't sexy yet, but I don't believe that people don't care. They do. In many cases, our hands feel tied because of the societal and power structures that we exist within. We are at a tipping point. Things are changing rapidly. Things can change for the better, but only if we give it the attention it requires. It's said that whatever we give attention to will grow. Let's hope that the political spectacle will soon calm down and our attention will be drawn back to the most fundamental of human concerns, our very survival and the survival of all that enchants our lives in this place." End quote. I would disagree with the "nature just isn't sexy," but otherwise I concur. Let's get out there and hassle our elected representatives until they have no choice but to respond. We seem to be living in a time of change, so let's drive that change. And that brings us to the end of this week's podcast. If you've liked what you've heard, could you please follow the link in the show notes and vote for World Organic News in the Australian Podcast Awards? Thanks in advance. Any suggestions, feedback or criticism of the podcast or blog are most welcome. Email me at podcast@worldorganicnews.com. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back in a week.